For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin-only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
Pleb Underground welcomes you to episode 20. This year, I hope you found yourself stacking plenty. Real plebs can't stop buying the dip. Fractal and Erik advise, please enjoy your holiday trip. Psychedelics, they can seat us. You know fiat won't defeat us. Maybe consider putting down the bottle. You know life isn't meant to be led at full throttle. Things done well are meant to take time. Cook from fresh. You can make the sublime. Make your dressings, say your blessings. Before you eat, perhaps thank the divine. Kick back, roll some fat joints. Listen to Bitcoiners making succinct points. Normies say Bitcoin is for buying drugs, but it's the fiat world that has the bigger thugs. Like the WEF, they're not all about group hugs. Bitcoiners know to fix, not eat the bugs. Bitcoin bulls, there's a herd of us. Wall Street know, now they've heard of us. Authoritarians want to murder us. The choice is simple. Verify or further trust.
Walton, that was absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. And if, in case you didn't understand from Walton's extremely complex rhyme, that's right, we've got two awesome Bitcoiners for our Christmas trip / Christmas special. That's right, we've got Erik Cason, I hope I pronounced your last name right, and fractalEncrypt. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on Pleb Underground. This is absolutely amazing.
Thanks for having us.
Fuck yeah, man. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to point out that there's a 75% chair ratio going on here, okay? There's three of us that have chairs. Fractal is the only hardcore Bitcoiner here who does not have a chair.
Although there's no proof of the lack of chair, to be fair.
You know what?
No doubt. Yeah, there's no way to verify this, but straight up, yeah, like I haven't had a chair in a long time. I had this chiropractor. He was like a 70-year-old man, and he was actually paralyzed. And he was like, he would tell me that sitting is the new smoking, and he's like, it's like really bad for you.
Sitting's
and
awful.
Like, yeah, man. So no, I have a standing desk at my like art lab. I don't have no chair here at all. There's not even a fucking chair in the whole room.
You know what? Based on your previous work, I'm gonna have to trust that you're not on a chair.
No doubt. Actually, I'm
okay,
sitting
here
on
we go. All right. Well, guys, you know what's about to happen. We are going to dive into the numbers. Here we go.
The numbers, of course, brought to us by TimechainStats.com. That's TimechainStats.com. And a new way to browse the time chain, you can head over to TimechainCalendar.com. That's TimechainCalendar.com.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 768,669. The Bitcoin price, 16,836. Total public lightning capacity, 5,110.26. Moscow time, 59:40. And the chain rewrite days, 871. I know, nobody cares, but you know what? I'm used to reading them off. So, yeah, they're uneventful, and we don't really care. But we read
with 69 in there.
Bitcoin's all about the numbers, man. It's all about the numbers.
Yeah. You know what? It is sometimes, right? When I hit a 420 or a 69 in there, I kind of chuckle, but otherwise I don't really care.
No doubt. No,
Oh,
but
God.
to me, I'm a Bitcoin data fanatic, man. I want to see all the numbers and, get blockchain statistics and what's going on. I just love the numbers. So keep doing it. It's beautiful.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, on that note, let's just we're gonna dive in already. Here we go. So, tweet from Hodlnot just got informed that the Norwegian Court of Appeals have allowed Craig's appeal. He's gonna have to do it all over again, and he will. That absolutely just totally blows. Thanks to Walton for sharing this. Tweet from Alex Gladstein. Bloomberg out here estimated that 300 million people in India use Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. 64 million in Nigeria, 54 million in Pakistan. As far as I, what is that? As far as I can
tell, maybe.
Okay, as far as I can tell, these numbers seem too high, but it'll be the reality either way in a few short years maximum. Get ready for 1 billion users. All right, guys. So this is, even though this is numbers, this is also partial hopium. Let's, let's be honest, that's some good hopium right there.
I'll just briefly say that I'm not a fan of Gladstein, though I did share this with you. And I don't follow him, even though apparently you do. Nonetheless, I'm not so sure about HRF. I think they're kind of WEF puppets a little bit. But he is sharing maybe some accurate numbers and certainly some positive looking numbers.
How far away do you think we are from 1 billion users? I am going to ask Erik this first, and then we'll go to fractalEncrypt on that. How far away realistically do you think we are from 1 billion users? And not like it makes a difference because we're not experts at this, but what are your thoughts?
In all honesty, like I'll be surprised if we ever actually get to 1 billion users. Like I'm a big fan. Like I don't think Bitcoin's designed for most people. I think it's too complicated. It's too hard. There's so much work that goes into being involved in this, and I'm a little heartbroken because so often I'll find that there's people that are like, what's so wrong with the world? And I'm like, oh, like I got the answer. Let me tell you. And they're just like, what? Like this is too hard. Like I can't understand that. And like that's what it is. And I've said this before, but like I'm really uninterested in the majority of people. Like I'm really interested in the small intolerant minority who, when they come to me, instead of them being like tell me about Bitcoin, they're much more like, I want to know about Bitcoin. Like tell me how to use it better. Like what else can I do? What are other things on your radar? Because those are the people who are really building and who are going to help create the better world that we want to see. And so I'm really only interested in that revolutionary vanguard that wants to make that change, and everybody else will follow. So for me, getting to 1 billion users isn't nearly as big of a deal as getting, 100 million militant Bitcoiners who are utilizing this technology as a praxis, as opposed to, being some fun internet money or something.
Yeah, well said. I like to say that Bitcoin isn't for everybody, but it is for anybody.
Yes.
It's very much a voluntary thing that you really have to pursue. And this is why I don't really like the idea that you orange pill people, because they have to. You don't orange pill someone when you get them to buy Bitcoin. They are orange pilled when they take on that personal responsibility and curiosity to start championing their own learning about Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. They orange pill themselves. Yeah. They really do orange pill themselves.
That's what I believe, essentially. Yeah.
All right. So go ahead, Erik.
I was just going to add that it's very pedagogical. You need to have that understanding of why Bitcoin creates self-sovereignty and empowerment in order to continue the feedback and understanding that this isn't I'm learning about finance to get rich. This is I'm learning about the tools of digital self-sovereignty so that I can actually protect myself in a meaningful way.
I think that's incredibly important. And obviously, I think one of the biggest hurdles that we have as not necessarily as Bitcoiners, but as I'd say as people learning about Bitcoin to overcome, right? Because you're essentially having to unlearn a lot of the bullshit that you've learned in order to be able to now fill this new void of space with new information that is correcting the old information. So fractal.
That's quite often true with a lot of learning, though, Phil, to be fair. In all education, you have to kind of deal with misconceptions that en route to kind of learning the truth. Yeah,
absolutely.
I do think psychedelics are a good way to get into that unlearning mindset for a lot of people, where it's hey, there's been a curtain pulled over my reality here, and it kind of lets you pull back the veil in that sense. But when
I want to circle back to this topic a little bit later in the show, because I think it's one that it's one of the reasons I got this grouping together, because So,
there's certain phrases or words that might trigger me, and it brings it out. But yeah, for sure.
No, it's all good, man. We appreciate it.
Question, because you asked okay, how long till we get to 1 billion users or something like that, and I had just told you that numbers are beautiful, and then now we run into this situation where I'm like, wait, on-chain numbers are beautiful because there's a source of truth there. Yet when we go into this off-chain data, then there's no way to really verify this. So this billion users, it's like, I actually have no clue how close we are, how far we are from that number. And I don't know that there's a real way to verify that type of thing. We can verify the node counts and things like that, and how many like public non-Tor nodes there are, things of that nature. So those numbers you can trust and say, like, these are actual users that, yeah, I mean, at least they have a node working. You don't know if each node represents one person or 10, or you know, if they're like even like a SPV wallet provider or something, it could represent thousands. But you know, it's like, you know, at least there's that one there per whatever it is. So we run into these things where it's like, you hear these numbers, and when I saw that tweet too the other day, I was like, damn, like that's more than I would have thought. Like those numbers seem high to me.
Yep.
Because one time I ran into some argument where it was talking about how few number of people you need to really turn the tide, and it gave the example of kosher food, where it was saying that I guess the population of Jewish people is so small in terms of world population. It's like a 1 or 2% of the people, yet you go into every grocery store and they pretty much have kosher food of some kind. And why is this? They say that because that 1 or 2% of people of the worldwide population is enough to move the needle, where there's buying power and there's financial power behind that, and it's recognized enough by the big players that they will take stock and note. And now that's become an everyday part of people's lives. So I definitely liked Erik's answer, and I think that makes a lot more sense to me in a you know, the world that we live in. Although I think at some point you're going to crest over a stream where, you know, if we do hit hyper Bitcoinization, or there is some kind of currency that's based on Bitcoin, or if Bitcoin is the only reserve currency, then you'll have those billion users by default, because everybody will be using it. And not because it's hard or easy or confusing or not. It's just, honestly, like, what is more confusing than the dollar and how they create it and make it, and how it's, you know, like the whole slavery behind that? There's nothing more confusing than the US dollar, and that's like the world reserve currency right now. But yet we all use it, because when you're born, someone, you know, your grandpa gives you $1 when you see him, and it's like, oh, hey, cool, whatever. So like, you're taught that this has value. And I think like there will be just a shift in the world, and it's one of those slow incremental things. It may not be like this one moment that comes upon us where it's like, oh, okay, now, you know, we hadn't this happen and it's going to be everybody's in on Bitcoin. No, it's more of just like a slow thing, and people use it not because they want to, but just because that's what people get paid in, or that's what people accept for their goods. And, you know, I think that's really why people work for the dollar, is because there's dollar denominated debt and dollar denominated economy that happens. So, okay, if I want food, I go to the grocery. Maybe if I go to the farmer's market, there's some people that take Bitcoin. So you learn how to work with these things. But, you know, I think the herd is going to follow the herd. So those type of things take time. And I really don't even know what a billion number people is in terms of the world population. I haven't like looked that up recently, but that seems like a lot.
Yeah, it's like an eighth or something like that. But
Yeah, exactly.
I think,
well, holy shit, no, I don't think we're there.
Yeah, right? Like, come on. There's like 7 points. What is it? 7.35
how do you
billion?
find these things? There's probably statistical
Supposedly?
sampling. You know, there's a number of problems with where that number comes from. I can't imagine it's everyone being surveyed. It might be how many people have an account with something. You know, even if they have $10, like, does it, you know, and they keep it on exchange, does that really make them a user? No, it doesn't. In any way, shape.
That's another thing. Right. Who is a user?
I'm sure there's a bunch of issues there.
Well,
but if for a moment we can just have a little look at some dollar-denominated spending.
Well, look at what we have done lately. This is just totally insane, and we haven't even started the next recession. When the next recession really comes home to roost, this is going to be something horrific, because the revenues that the government is taking in are going to fall. And we just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which adds another $750 billion to this. And so I just can't believe that the people running things are allowed to continue running things.
So, guys, tell me more about the Inflation Reduction Act. Is that really what it's called?
Have they actually called it that? Loud, guys. You're supposed to keep that quiet. It's not inflation creation. It's inflation reduction. It's amazing to me how the naming of these bills has come to literally, it always represents its opposite. There's like a really interesting linguistic thing at play, like when you reach the end, because like one of my strongest beliefs is that like because we live in fiat world where like lies have fundamentally become forms of truth, it's cause for a hypostaticization of everything, so that like literally when the liars are speaking towards things, they actually represent its polar opposite because they're embedded so deep in that. And it's just really strange how frequent and often that happens. And to me, like this is just part of the generalized latent authoritarianism that pretty much has permeated everything, is that like no longer is the natural form of truth as a proof of work present itself as being true, but it's about the authoritarian decree of what is right, despite what might actually prove itself to be true.
To
It's
me,
a different
comes down
form.
to-
Oh,
Go on,
go
Phil.
ahead. Okay, I was just gonna say it's a different form of POW. It's proof of words. It's not the same thing, right? Like that's all it is. Like these are words, and it's crazy because they put this together, right? This information is put together and packaged in a way where we're supposed to be cheering this psychotic, shitty behavior that is worse for everyone involved. Like this is the weird thing, right? These people, right? These people that are helping to push through these bills and to print all of this money, this ruins their lives too, incrementally. And it's strange because it just ruins their life a lot less. And they're okay with it.
But it's all
In all
about
honesty, like
incentives,
I don't.
guys. It's all
Yeah.
about incentives, and at the end of the day, the reason why these people lie is because they're not incentivized to tell the truth. And the reason why that is because it's because of central banking. When you have central banks buying sovereign debt because the governments are spending more than they collect in taxes, that enables the politicians to say all kinds of lies because they don't actually have to hold anything to account. Therefore, they aren't held to account. Like they're incentivized to win popularity contests by lying. So ignore all these just idiots who are politicians that are going, oh yeah, I like Bitcoin. Ignore Dennis Porter and all that nonsense. Like I used to like Dennis, but come on, you're an idiot. Like what, the politicians will say anything to gain votes. It's that simple. They are self-serving liars.
Well, and I think it's really
them, the
important
vast
to point
majority.
out that like I very sincerely don't think that there's anybody kind of hanging around being like, haha, look, I'm gonna lie about this to like get like I don't think they're maniacal. I think they're literally they come from a
They're
nihilistic
opportunists. They're
existence.
opportunists, right?
Yeah, and to them they're like, look, like we have to obscure and obfuscate a little bit if we're gonna try to get what we want. And I sincerely think most of them believe that printing out money and giving it to other people like is a great thing that's productive for everybody and helps. But like this is one of the problems about that form of authoritarian thought where you've been told something is true and you move forward with that, is that most of us have been educated in Austrian economics, where we've discovered that modern monetary theory or Keynesianism is a pretty horrific thing that allows for the government now to manipulate, contort, and obscure the economy in such a way that like we're at like the 80-year or at the 100-year back end of this process, where like the entirety of our economy is part of a generalized war machine and all of the tertiary apparatuses of that. And so like there was a question that I saw on Twitter earlier about like the difference between fiat and capitalism. And it's really hard to disentangle them because we're so deep into fiatism. It's literally impossible to see what a truly capitalist society would look like. And furthermore, that like, in my opinion, anarcho-capitalism only makes sense through a lens of digitized, commoditized money, such as Bitcoin, because like now we're actually talking about a free market economy where like violence isn't an implicit part of how it functions.
No, absolutely, 100%. Okay, let's go to Fractal. Let's see if he has any thoughts on
Erik
this.
brought up the word smithery that goes on behind the naming of these bills. So you have something called the Inflation Reduction Act, where it's the exact opposite of that. And then, then they look at you like, oh, you don't want to vote for the Save for the Children bill. You don't want to like save the children. So they will just name the bills in these ways where it actually has nothing to do with the underlying text of the bill. You read the Save the Children bill, and it actually got, attacks against encryption or end-to-end encryption or any kind of self-sovereignty at all. And, they hide all this in the, page 984 of the bill. And, then they just call it the Save the Children bill. And then if anybody doesn't want to vote for that, then they'll shame them on social media or whatever. And like, this person doesn't want to save children, so we need to cancel them immediately. So, this wordsmithing is, again, I totally agree with Erik that there's nobody probably like, doing that hand gesture and saying like twiddling their mustache, like in an evil way. It's actually probably more just economic incentives. Like maybe they have like lobbyists or people that are paying them to think or vote in a certain way. And that just influences their goals, because it's just purely like, hey, maybe like there's financial incentives in this for me to do this. Or it could be, power incentives, because many politicians tend to be motivated by that. So it could be like a personal power motivation, or it could be like a financial motivation. It's nothing sinister or conspiracy at all. It's just simple like human nature. So I think a lot of these things are just, like, oh, we got a bill that we're passing with $47 million. Like, how much of that can we get for ourselves or our team? And, there's just a lot of that going on. And I do also agree fully with Erik that if you don't know anything about money and they purposely make it so that we don't, then yes, it actually seems like an awesome thing to print more of it and give it to people. I actually didn't think about that. Like how it seems like, like that's actually like a good guy thing to do. To us, it seems fucking ridiculous. And like, why would you do that? But right, if you don't have that education or that baseline knowledge of, how this money is actually debt slavery, then
I don't have a baseline knowledge because they're gaslit by their government, right? Their government tells them that inflation is good.
Well, it's not even that. It's that our entire education system is structured in a way where it's purposefully educating you about certain things, but then purposefully, I'm losing the word before, but they're obfuscating things from you, where it's making it not obvious on purpose, because they don't want you to understand how these things work, because they're actually tools of your enslavement. So if you start figuring that stuff out too much, you better do that on your own, because it's not coming through the public school system. I have nothing wrong with the public school system. I think that it's fine. It's just you have to recognize it for what it is. It's like it's basically creating more cogs that fit in the machine. Like that's the entire goal of the education system, is just to create a good employee. So you just have to recognize what they are.
The history we're taught's really interesting, because it's always this sort of narrative of like, well, the government's trying to be the good guy, and like it makes mistakes sometimes, but it always corrects that mistake, and like it means well. And I just find it really
slavery
frustrating.
was no big deal in elementary school, and it's like, oh, just this little temporary thing they did 100 years ago. So yeah,
and then like each successive step,
gloss over that,
It's just well, like with World War II, it's like with World War II, it's like the Allies were the good guys who were like saving the people from genocides. But then it's like, well, what was this Dresden bombing all about? Like, what about the fire bombings of Tokyo? Like what about Operation Paperclip, where we integrated all of the Nazis directly into the American military apparatus? Like, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. And like, I go through these dozens of things, and I always find it really interesting that people are like, yeah, like mistakes were made, but like now it's all good guys that are in the three-lettered agencies. And it's look, like I mean, I get it's really hard and difficult, and I really want to empathize with like realizing that your government is a hateful apparatus that only has violence as its capacity to do things is really, really scary. But like, if we look at the chain of historicism, I really struggle to understand how we get to today, and that people are like,
what?
Weird.
Okay.
Me? No worries, but it just strikes me as really absurd that most people can look at this chain of history and then be like, oh, but like now things are actually good, and people aren't trying to oppress or hurt us, and that like they're printing out money for the good of everybody. And I don't know. I mean, I'm really at the place that like I really struggle to talk to normal people about stuff, just because I just feel really hurt and upset about it, because like to me they're so far behind on the general dialogue that like they can't even get to the place of being like, oh, like I'm getting totally hosed here, and like I'm being completely taken advantage of on every way till Sunday.
They still believe that their government and their secret services are the good guys. Like they
Yeah.
essentially
Like Carl
believe
Sagan
that
says
their
about
government,
bamboozle.
their government is their god for many people essentially in the Western world, and whether
there's a
they
reason for
don't
that.
recognize
That's part of
such.
that education system. They're training you, like be a patriot. It's part of this whole thing. Like that, where are you getting your history from? It's from this well of this free public education system. So I think fully that they're doing this in a purposeful way. And also I really love to think about what Erik was talking about, like the history that we get. You don't think about it too much, but it's actually like there's so many holes in history. We actually only have a very small fraction of human history that we understand, because it's really, history is written by the winners, and it's a series of winners. So everybody that's winning, you're kind of getting their version of the story, and you're just kind of sweeping away the losers. And every winner is always the good guy, like Erik was saying. Like, hey, these are the good guys. Like, yeah, mistakes were made. Like, I just died over here. That was so funny. Like, yeah, mistakes are made. We just, we're all good, but sometimes we just make mistakes. Like, no, like all history is a matter of, you're getting the story from somebody who's basically feeding it to you, and they're at the top of it, and basically they're the good guys. So all history is suspect, which brings us back to Bitcoin, which has the one true history that we can all agree on. So I just love that we now have a countermeasure that is widely distributed, and that individuals can utilize and leverage for their own self-sovereign needs and tools and stuff. So I think like that we've always had this history fed down in a I don't know if it's top down way, in essence, like you're getting fed history from a higher source, but now it's like, no, the history is widely distributed, and if you try to feed me some bullshit, it's my node is going to reject that as invalid, and we haven't had this before.
This is an awesome
what history actually is like it is fundamentally a proof of stake, where they're like, hey, like here's our story, like take that on. And when you start to actually do the proof of work in history, you find all of those holes, and you realize that like the blockchain of history doesn't actually like sync up in any meaningful way. And that's why it's so important that we now have this time chain, because like it turns out that like the control of wealth is the most important thing that has ever happened, in addition to the fact of that there's been a constant century-long propaganda war against people to understand the importance of that history, not only in terms of the actual historicism of events that have happened, but also the historicism of the actual accounting of how the general monetary system works. Because like if you actually understand how the Bretton Woods system came about, it's truly horrifying to realize that like we essentially played this shell game where we're like, yeah, like we're gonna get everybody back to a gold standard. But in the meantime, you guys should all take these dollars that will totally exchange for gold whenever you guys want. We absolutely will not inflate the shit out of it. Oh, and like this like former Nazi bank that we said that we would suspend, let's like make that into the Bank of International Settlements, because like gold from the teeth of millions of dead Jews, like that's like a great base to like start an international monetary system. To me, like that's one of the ones that's like so horrifying, is realizing that like the Bank of International Settlements was literally the SS's gold laundering bank in Switzerland, and they decided to make that into the world's largest financial institution. Like what the hell?
This is by far the craziest numbers discussion we have ever had, and it's totally amazing. But we definitely we have to move on to our next segment that we're diving into. That's right. We are diving into REKT.
Up next, we have REKT, sponsored by CryptoCloaks. CryptoCloaks.com or CryptoCloaks.eu. You can find a whole range of Bitcoin goodies, including the Honey Badger. You see Phil modeling there, with the secret compartment in which you can keep your FUD dice, or perhaps a signing device. Up next, you see the Hodlonaut helmet. Very nice. If you want to support the fight against evil, buy that item. 50% of the donations will go to defendingbtc.com, and if you use the code PlebUnderground, you get 5% off all of the Bitcoin goodies over at CryptoCloaks.com or CryptoCloaks.eu.
All right, on this special edition of Pleb Underground, I figured, REKT, we'd kind of go a little bit lighter, but still, still make sure that the shitcoiners know that they suck. So we have like a nice little mix of REKT. So the first one is a tweet from Joe Consorti. Joe was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago, and this video is absolutely ridiculous. Here we go. The Guru price action trading course merchants are still solvent, so Jerome Powell has plenty of work to do. Send it all to zero. Okay, what is he talking about? Let's watch this.
Entering here. I want to see what happens around this area to see if we're going to drop or we're going to push up. Once I see this candle have no bearish momentum, I know that our support is strong enough to hold the support and we're going to push up. And look what happened right after that the candle closed.
Yeah.
It pushed straight up. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's like, okay, bet. You want to see what's going on at the levels of support. We got to push up, we got a high, we got a low. And this is called a, what kind of pullback is this? Complex fucking pullback. That's all it is, bro. Entering here.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry, but this right here, bro, this dude is cooked as fucking has no idea what's going on. Oh, I'm sorry, but yeah. Okay, so look, that hindsight trading shit. That I'm sorry, but if you're paying those people for trading advice, you deserve to get wrecked. I mean, that is the most ridiculous crap, and unfortunately, that tells us, right, that even though we seem to be in a bear market, apparently there's just a little bit more REKT to go around.
Bill, they say hindsight. They say hindsight is 2020, and it's clearly 2022, almost 2023. So, guys, you're like 2 or 3 years behind. You got to catch up.
Oh, very well said. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that was just a good little laugh at some just terrible, terrible advice. Anyways, all right, let's move on. It's the end of the year, right, guys? The end of the year. And you know what? Kind of like an I told you so. We like to do that. Here we go. This is a article out of the block. Here we go. The metaverse market collapses with monthly platform sales falling 96%. Oh my gosh. We are surprised. Monthly sales on the metaverse platforms fallen 96% this year. The Sandbox reclaimed its market dominance among metaverse Sandbox. Though Decentraland finished the year with the most valued metaverse land parcels. That does sound good. That does sound pretty good. While metaverse platforms brought in 49.2 million in monthly trading volume in January, that figure dropped to a mere 2 million in November. Okay, that's a 96% drop. And I mean, if you just take a look at some of these charts, I mean, this says it all, right? This is just absolute crap, and we're gonna
I'd love to know like how the people are doing that we covered in the former shows. There was one guy that spent $300,000 on a house in the metaverse, I think it was like detached in Miami. It had like a pool or something, 4 bedrooms, very nice house, but in the metaverse, so completely fucking worthless. Nonetheless, and then there was another guy who sold a kidney to buy an NFT. So like, it doesn't cost an arm or a leg. They cost kidneys. They cost lives. Like, fuck shit coins. Stop it, please.
Absolutely. Okay, so here we're gonna continue on here. NFT World's led metaverse.
Oh, and it says NFT Marketplace OpenSea delisting Cuban artists and users right there. So that's certainly an interesting move. Sorry, right? I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just shocked to see them just single out the Cubans as like, yo, you guys aren't good enough for NFTs. Sorry, your kidneys not gonna work over here.
Fractal, they're building an open digital marketplace. So we shouldn't pay attention to the fact that they just censored Cuban artists.
So open, we'll do surgery on your ass. Yeah.
it's just words. All right, here we're gonna wrap up the
things.
Huh? Yes.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish the segment.
Here, we'll wrap it up and then we can chat about this. NFT World's led metaverse land values over the first few months of 2022, with the average sale price of a virtual plot hitting a high of $44,000 in the week of February 26th. Decentraland now claims that lead, although at a much lower price, with an average of $1,780 per land parcel. Okay? So, and this is just a chart showing you essentially their you know, the average land sales price, and obviously you see it all trending to zero. So guys, somebody paid $44,000 for virtual land. You heard what Walton said before. I mean, look, Fractal, you're an artist. Why is the metaverse not like, why do you choose to create physical art? You know, how come you choose to create physical art, and why is it Bitcoin only?
Well, the thing is like my art that I create is physical, but it all starts in a digital format for the most part now. Like I used to be a traditional pencil artist, but you know, like no, I mean anything that I do through the laser, CNC, you know, a lot of that's all just starts in the computer world. But the thing is like it's just super easy to copy any kind of digital work. So if somebody does take the time to go ahead and like rebuild one of my sculptures or something, like it took them some proof of work to actually like fake my stuff. It's a lot harder than right clicking and taking. You know, NFTs are a very touchy subject in the sense that they're just, you know, the people that are into it just seem to be very into it, and the people that are not into it, it's like very polarized in the sense that there's really not much middle ground. I actually was like super into it in 2017 when I got into Bitcoin at first. Like as an artist, I came in and people were saying like this is the future of art, and I totally bought that hook, line, and sinker, and your art will be on chain forever. And you know, that all this stuff appealed to me as an artist. It was like, hey, you know, you take control of your stuff. There's no gallery, no middleman, and like there's just so much cool things about it that just seemed like, wow, this is really neat. But then as I started looking into it, it was like, hey, wait, like this thing works on a smart contract. What is this smart contract? And I start looking at it, and it's like, hey, wait, this is like written by some dude in like his underwear and a beard in New York City in an apartment drinking beer, and he has this pause feature on this contract that can reassign the token, like my self-sovereign art, and like take it away from me and give it to somebody else, and my art's not even on chain at all. So like it was one of those things where I kind of like felt like I thought this was really cool, and I got duped by it. And the funny thing is Decentraland too. It's like Decentraland, like that, I was all into shitcoining in 2017, so I thought all these shitcoins were cool. And Decentraland, I remember them talking about, hey, we're going to release this cool like metaverse world. It's going to be awesome, and like you're going to come out, and like I like as an artist, I'm like, okay, this is interesting, like let's see what they're going to do. And then they released it, and it looked like fucking South Park, dude. Like their level of art was like basically a bunch of like little like Lego blocks that are walking around and shit. And I was like, this is the future. I was like, even as a dumb shit coiner, I was smart enough to see that stuff was dumb. And the virtual land thing, dude, oh my god, like I remember watching people like early on like slinging these things, and like, you know, this stuff is like there was trading for a lot of money, as you saw, like, oh, this guy's paying $44,000 for like a fake house that doesn't even like, there, you know, there's no way to actually assign like this digital ownership stuff, you know, especially in the way that it's done on Decentraland or any of this stuff. Like that's like a complete theater. Yeah. So to me, see that, you know, I think you got me going on this one. Sorry.
I mean, this is the thing that I find so interesting about.
Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
This is what I find so interesting about like crypto and NFTs and virtual land, is that like these are all these acronyms. So like an NFT is supposed to stand for a non-fungible token. Well, it turns out that like all of the NFTs actually like are fungible insofar that like they're not actually on chain forever. They don't have cryptography baked into them. They aren't actually decentralized. And there's the same problem with crypto. It's like crypto actually has broken its own relationship to cryptography, because like it's centralized shitcoiny stuff that's actually not protected by robust cryptography or decentralization. And it's so interesting to me that this sort of nihilistic world viewpoint, again, has appropriated language in a way to render it useless. And it renders it useless for the specific objective to be able to grift around it. You know, and like, I think
absolutely, and it's grift like all the way top to bottom. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and like that's what's really sad, is that grift works so well because the nascent rhymosome at the very bottom, you know, like the promise that non-fungible tokens could be, has potentiality, and that grift is then used against artists in such a way to make sure that like it burns that, you know. And so I recently tweeted like, I'm excited to see how, you know, like the Ordinals project that essentially allows for you to have NFTs on Bitcoin. Like I'm interested to see where that goes, because I want to see these sort of blended mediums where like the only way you get to view a digital piece of art is like destroying a physical piece of art, or vice versa. And I think that there's real value there, but it has to be thoughtfully pursued. And it's very clear to me that everything up till now has frankly been a grift, you know. And
To me, the
I'm
grift
trying to move.
essentially is the illusion of scarcity of all of these things. They're selling, you know, limited edition, one of one, all this kind of thing. And the reason why the normies flock to it is because with fiat money printing, there isn't scarcity of money, and so they're desperately looking for places to put their money where they think that they can store it. They, you know, they don't really understand what they're doing. They're trying to do something good in theory. You know, they might buy complete crap. They might be buying, but other people are buying jewelry, or they're buying, I don't know, cars, or like there's a whole bunch of different things people put their money into that are very bad stores of value. But ultimately that's what they're trying to do, and they're being, you know, captivated by you know, magicians wearing a bunch of designer goods, you know, trying to sell them a story of riches.
So I
Well,
want to
like,
go
I
back.
actually think that's well, hold on a second. I do think that was like a very interesting an interesting part of it, but I think that's only one layer of it. And I think like the deception works on many levels, and it even is a self-deception in many ways, because kind of how Erik mentioned that it's like ICOs. It's actually super like ICOs, because as an artist, think about it, you're actually releasing digital tokens that you want to sell to people that they're supposed to increase in value, and or whatever it is. And honestly, the whole market of NFTs when I was doing it seemed to be make quick, fast work that other people can, you know, kind of sell and trade around. And like, it wasn't that people wanted to hold your stuff. Whereas now, like when people buy my art, like a lot of them want to hold it and keep it. And that kind of feels cool to me. Like, I don't really want people to like try to flip all my stuff and just make, you know, use it as a financial instrument. I think that's fine. But I think like if you want a financial instrument, Bitcoin is far superior than my art, and you just buy Bitcoin to store your value. And if you like my art because it's beautiful to you, then you buy that. But I think that from the artist level, okay, you're issuing in essence shitcoins. You know, you're wanting people, you're trying to take people's Bitcoin with your shitcoin. So there's that level of it. But what's even more weird is that you're kind of like hired as an artist because you're creating advertising for a shitcoin, because like you're creating utility for their base layer. So okay, you know, by using our coin like to do your art, it's like also you become beholden to that. So in essence, these people that are at the top of the free money faucet have plenty of this free easy money, and they use it to pay these artists who become advertisers for them, and they don't realize it, but they're becoming enslaved to this, you know, pre-mine culture. And they also become beholden to it in the way that it's now feeding their family, and they feel incentivized to keep doing this stuff, and like it takes over their vision and their goals, and they begin working for this you know, entity that has now trapped them and enslaved them through these weird false promises. So there's this weird deception that happens on every level. And I definitely think Walton was right in hitting an interesting point that, yeah, people want to put their value in something, but there's just so many deep levels to the NFT thing. And I did see the ordinals thing, and I thought that was cool. One of the interesting things that ordinals seem to solve that was actually like that, hey, your art isn't on chain, because in the ordinal system, it looks like you actually do put some data within it, but it's not held on chain. So it actually solves two problems that I don't like. One, there's no chain bloat, because it's almost like it's like a self-hosted client or something that's reading this data rather than putting it right on chain, or somehow you're reading it through there. So it kind of solves those two things. I'm not very super educated on it. I read the docs. I thought it was interesting. I didn't really like the NFT part of it, but I tried to read past it because it was talking about writing inscriptions on Bitcoin, and that part was interesting.
Yeah, and I think that there's a really interesting and important tool. And on your notes about how essentially awesome. this whole shell game has started with people trying to seek to put wealth into something, whether it's diamonds or art or whatever. Like, this is all part of a fundamental schizophrenia that society has developed around fiat. And like, that schizophrenia only develops through having a hyper paranoid society that can't save money anywhere, you know. And so it becomes this schizophrenia of like, well, I have to put money here and here and here and here and here because everything could dissolve, and if everything dissolves, I have to do, and it just becomes this gigantic shell game where at the end, like, you're so frazzled and paranoid because it's like, okay, so like I made $2 million, but now I owe the government 60% of that $2 million. And I have to get more money here, and I have to make sure that I get this, you know. And so by the end of this, you just get this massive, complicated structure that like essentially is the schizophrenia and paranoia of living in a world where you can't anchor to any form of truth anymore, because we live in a nihilistic hellscape where pretty much everyone tells you truth isn't a thing of this world. It doesn't matter. There's no good. There's no bad. There's just trying to live.
Well, back to what we were saying about politicians and central banking before, it's disincentivized for the elites, and so then that everyone else just copies. The incentive is to get ahead at all costs, because people's time is being stolen, and they resort to extreme measures.
I just want to go back to a point that Erik made earlier before we wrap up the REKT segment and move on to Hopium. So you were talking about this grift, and fractalEncrypt touched on the fact that this grift has many different levels, and this is true, I believe of pretty much all grifts. But the NFT grift specifically, having covered failed shitcoin projects now for like almost 3 years, the NFT grift is especially, I find, nefarious. And I understand that it's not somebody that's just sitting there going, like, haha, I want to screw somebody. Although with NFTs, I beg to differ for some of these, a good portion of them. But they market them a lot. A lot of these NFTs are marketed as investments specifically. I have no issue with this, like, because I'm a collector of crap. I've said this 1,000 times before. I collect Kid Robot Dunnies. I collect Garbage Pail Kids. If I could afford fractalEncrypt art, I would collect that. I have some pieces from Monkey Chief Monkey. Like, I totally, I love the swag. I love all of the fun stuff. I think it's amazing. But when you buy this stuff, you're buying it because you love it. You're buying it because you want to support the artist. You're not buying it because it's an investment. And if you are, then you're being misled, and you're possibly misleading yourself, because it's not an investment. Okay, like, this is not something that it's not necessarily going to yield a return. It's not that piece of art doesn't necessarily provide some type of a financial vehicle by way of producing income because of it just being there. Like, I understand that has happened due to scarcity and whatnot, and the fame of the artist. But at the end of the day, a lot of times these people collect it because they start off collecting it because they loved it. They thought it was beautiful. They were willing to part whatever value they had because this thing meant something to them. And the problem with NFTs is all of this is meaningless. So they have no choice but to use this investment grift, because there is no other reason to hold a picture that you don't own. Like, it's psychotic. Like, there's no other reason. Like, why would you do this? So they have to convince you that you're investing.
It is also going to continue, though, because I think I think we talked about this last week, like marketing agencies, it's a way for them to low cost produce some essentially worthless merchandise that they can sell for a whole bunch of different celebrities. We saw last week, for example.
It'll definitely continue, and it'll not only that, it'll definitely grow. I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, this stuff will die off, and then Coca-Cola's doing it, and like basically like a whole bunch of celebrities that I thought were cool started doing it, and then you're like, oh, this person's an idiot, and then it's like, it's I think this stuff will grow, but the investment angle is actually a very interesting thing, because a lot of these NFT things, it ranges on different levels. You do have people that are like able to write their own smart contracts and issue their own tokens and stuff like that, all the way to the other, like totally like non, like a package type scenario where you're just kind of having like a program print them out for you. So you have every level of kind of person that's releasing these things. And I totally forgot what the fuck I was talking about.
on that point,
to me all the time. All right, that wraps up the REKT segment. We are going to dive into the Hopium.
The Hopium, brought to you by Represent. Represent makes some wonderful apparel. T-shirts, hoodies, jumpers, tracksuit. They even make skateboard decks. they are owned by a Bitcoiner. It's important that Bitcoiners support Bitcoiners and their businesses, especially when they're making such great quality products. And if you head over there and use the code pleb-underground, you might find a little treat for you, a little discount on the excellent quality items that you can buy there. Once again, if you head over to representltd.com, you can find all of these very nice goods. So for this week's Hopium, I have three little links I'm going to share quickly in succession. The first, we have a new bit of technology using Lightning. A company has been developing a payment module essentially enables existing vending machines to accept Lightning payments. Sounds quite interesting to me. But the news of the week to me has certainly been NOSTR.
Yes.
And for me, it's more interesting what NOSTR can enable rather than NOSTR itself at this moment in time. I feel like, right now we're all on Twitter. There is, there's better, discovery. Yeah, okay, there's a bunch of shitcoiners you need to block and all this kind of stuff. But the conversation is happening elsewhere. But NOSTR as a protocol can be used to host a whole range of things, including a decentralized GitHub, which to me has a huge potential. And then lastly, a link from Coinbeast. Apparently in The Simpsons, they predicted the price of Bitcoin will be infinite. And we all know how everything that The Simpsons predicts comes true. So, guys, the Hopium.
Okay, that's huge. The Simpsons one, that's what got me. So look, if we get Family Guy and South Park as well, then we have the trifecta. Okay, and it's guaranteed. At that point, it doesn't even make a difference anymore what Bitcoin does, because those three shows will make it true. Erik,
prophecy.
Oh, Fractal, go ahead.
I just said it becomes a prophecy at that point once you've hit all three, the trilogy.
No, absolutely, 100%.
No, but that's pretty cool about the NOSTR thing. I haven't ever used NOSTR yet. I've seen all the discussion about it. It certainly looks interesting, but seeing that you could run the GitHub from it certainly makes you think. That's really interesting when you have things that are protocols. It's not just an app. There's actually more things you can do because it's a base layer, so you can build on top of it and do these interesting things that we're seeing. And I've seen some really neat things with the lightning faucets that people are doing on Nostr, and I'm just seeing it on Twitter, of course, because people are sharing it here. Thank goodness. And really, Elon kind of Streisand affected it into everybody, because I even tweeted, I was like, I really didn't care about Mastodon and Nostr at all until you just made it a policy that we're not allowed to talk about it. All of a sudden, it's like interesting to me. So.
And it shows that decentralization can be done without a blockchain, which I think is going to be a good way to kind of ward people off using a whole bunch of shitcoins, which obviously aren't really decentralized anyway. But being sold on blockchain is the only way to kind of decentralize.
Oh wow, that's a good point.
I have used
Nostr.
I mean,
like
Oh, go ahead, Erik.
I was just going to say, this is the sort of pedagogical thinking around Bitcoin that I think is really important, because NOSTR obviously isn't directly related to Bitcoin, but it is about having decentralized, robust protocols that are censorship resistant. And to me, right? Yeah, and this is all the praxeology that Bitcoin is around, is that I was writing about this recently, that Bitcoin, in a way, it's almost like this object that has a halo around it. And as an object, it doesn't matter. It's sort of the light of the halo that's around it, of all the stuff about people understanding why cryptography is important, people understanding why a signing device is important, people understanding why holding your own coins is important. And to me, the development that we get with Bitcoin is kind of being the backbone or the preeminent piece to this whole puzzle is really important, because that's how, through that form of thinking, that's what's going to give us all these other things, like decentralized social media, like a decentralized GitHub, like a decentralized JSTOR, and eventually it gets to a place where the whole stack from the machine to the web browser to the software to the protocols that you're using are all going to be decentralized, robust, and meaningfully encrypted in a way that like we're not just going to get hosed anytime somebody doesn't like something that we say.
Are you guys familiar with IPFS at all?
Yep.
Mhm.
That's
Okay,
that's
yeah,
what
when
they
I
use
was
for the NFT storage, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I was shitcoining, that was one of the places where that we were storing the NFTs was on something called IPFS. It's basically like BitTorrent, and that was another part of the thing that I didn't like, where they say, oh, you know, your art is on chain forever, and a lot of things are stored on this IPFS. And the way that it actually works is exactly like BitTorrent. If you're not seeding the data, then it just ceases to be on the internet anymore. It's just gone forever. Like somebody has to be invested enough to want to seed your stupid fucking cartoon, you know, into eternity. And I don't think many people are going to be incentivized to that. But I've kind of veered off to the side of my point is that IPFS, part of it is actually pretty interesting to have like a decentralized, like instead of BitTorrent where you're just kind of going and grabbing files, it's actually like an online entity where like people are just like I ran my own instance of IPFS and you could pin your own data there, and it didn't have to just be, you know, like it could be anything that you wanted to pin, like any type of data. So it became like a server that you could then, you know, have and like and then access from anywhere in the world through this thing, and it worked on hashing, and it was a pretty interesting concept in some ways for that. So I definitely think that there's room for those type of technologies. Now they totally screwed the whole thing up with that Filecoin thing that they did with that. So Filecoin's absolutely worthless, but like the IPFS part of it that sits behind it, that part of it is a semi-interesting thing.
I mean, to me, this is the hilarious nature of crypto and how like it's encrypted its own nature to itself, is that like the whole Trojan horse methodology of Bitcoin is like letting shitcoiners think that they can do the same thing. They go off and fuck it up. But like in that, they do all this excellent development for Bitcoin that'll let, you know, and like there's been so many developments across the board in terms of both cryptography and methodology that like now that we have all of these failed shitcoin projects that did that, we can appropriate different aspects of it, you know. So things like ZK snarks, you know, there's all sorts of different developments that I think are great. And like ordinals is another great example, is that we had 5 years of people fucking around with NFTs and doing all this other stuff. But because they were doing all of that garbage, we're able to pick out all the little gems from it and go, oh, like this stuff could actually work pretty well for decentralization. Oh, like this stuff's good for censorship resistant. And
even
so like
if none of it works is kind of an interesting thing too. Even if there's no gems to pick out, at least you've kind of battle tested a whole bunch of things that people thought was good enough to throw billions of dollars into, and now they've just horribly failed.
Like
so
turns out that like big blocks are a terrible idea, and like we're really happy that they went and ran big blocks on Bcash so we could see what an absolute clusterfuck that was, you know. And to me, like this is one of the reasons that like I'm not
don't trust verify.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and like and so like this is one of the reasons that like as much as like one, I think shitcoining is inevitable because it's sort of the original sin of Bitcoin, and two is that like I think they actually do like a bunch of really great work for us. And one of those is that like look at how much noise crypto's created over the last 2 years. That's really allowed for Bitcoin to continue on its own development path and not get fucked with. And like that's really important because like if it was just Bitcoin out there by itself, you bet they'd be gunning for us super hard. But instead, we get frauds like SFB who steals a bunch of money from all of these morons who don't understand what's going on. And that becomes the big story, as opposed to the fact that, you know, a country of 6 million people has adopted Bitcoin as their national currency.
It's an interesting thought. Shitcoin's like a shield.
FSB. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, whatever. Acronym boy.
Yeah, shitcoins are definitely a proof to show us things that should not be done. And I'm not talking about the technology itself. I'm talking about the addition of the useless fucking token to the technology. Like,
and that's
so
their proof of work is proving the work of a shit token doesn't actually work. And so like we applaud them and go, thank you for showing us that was a terrible idea.
What I like is that it means that idiots who don't actually use their brain, who outsource all their thinking, don't yet buy Bitcoin, and I can keep buying it slightly cheaper. So thank you for being distracted by the complete nonsense that is shitcoinery. To me, yeah, the Simpsons thing is clearly some good hopium, but I'm really excited about what NOSTR's gonna
Me too.
enable. But I wanna wrap up hopium just after, unless fractalEncrypt has anything more to say, sir.
I got curious all of a sudden if any of you guys are running that NOSTR thing. Like, what do you think? Like,
I am.
Have you used it, or what's the deal?
I am. I'll just talk quickly on it. So I'm running the Damus client, or Damus, however you want to pronounce it. It's on iOS. Sorry.
Shout out to William Cason who made it. It's phenomenal.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely. Shout out to William. So
like
I installed that on iOS, and I also used the web version. I think it was Ninja dot.
Astral Ninja.
Yeah.
Astral.ninja.
Thank you. Astral.ninja. Awesome. Okay, we're going to put those links in the show notes for the people who want to go mess around with NOSTR. So look, the UX in Damus is great. It's a nice slick user experience. Keep in mind it is in test flight right now, so there's like a lot of features that aren't there yet, but the look and the feel, it's like you could swap between Twitter and that, because we have to give Twitter credit where credit is due, right? It is a desirable user experience. People do enjoy it. It is evidenced by its network growth and its network effect. So these are fantastic. What sucks is all the censorship and the bullshit. So these clients that people are building, they can suck those parts out and just leave the censorship-free communications and the fact that anybody could be running a message relay. I honestly, I really think that a protocol like NOSTR is going to help apps give Twitter a run for their money. So
then how does it work in terms of like, I know Mastodon was where people had servers and you were going into servers, and I didn't like the idea that like the admin of the server had certain controls, that they might be able to see your stuff or things of that nature. So that was why I didn't use Mastodon. Is NOSTR, like, do you connect to someone else's instance, or how is that part of it?
So,
like, what are you doing to get to other people?
So I don't know like the real nuanced detail of it, and we're actually working on getting somebody that's working on NOSTR to come on the show to explain a lot of the nuance. But I do know this: the message relays, from what I read, if you set up a relay server, you have no ability to do anything. It's like a dumb server. It only receives and forwards the messages. That's it. So you are not really. And sorry.
It's like a message client. It's just sending and receiving.
Exactly. And the person running it, it does not give them any administrative privilege over the message data.
Okay. So it's not like if you send it to them, like they're
binary. They relay everything or nothing, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a dumb relay, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, look, as this continues to exist, right, we're all going to be learning about it a whole lot more. And, going back to, I don't know if it was Erik's point about this, but you see like Bitcoin created that. Yeah, it was Erik that said this, the Bitcoin halo effect. That's exactly what this is. It shines the light, unlike my camera that just turns off.
Let there be light.
All right. We are going to wrap up the Hopium. Walton, take it away, my friend. Wrap it up.
That was the Hopium, brought to you by Represent. That's representltd.com. So we have a final segment here, a little chat with our guests. I had a plan for the show to bring these two guests together. I don't know if they've been paired before, but to talk a little bit about psychedelics. A few years ago, when I was a younger man, I was a little bit of an amateur psychonaut. But it's been a few years. But I do think there is a correlation between people who are willing to kind of think outside the box, people who ask more questions, and people who do psychedelics, and people who are into Bitcoin. And one other kind of weird thought I've had is that, to me, Bitcoin kind of is a psychedelic. But it enables you to kind of, to me, to see reality and not be able to kind of see the lies over the top. And sometimes it can be slightly frustrating, right? Like you can't, you've gone outside of Plato's cave, right? You now know the truth. You can't like listen to the lies. It can be kind of painful to hear. Interact. You talked about Erik earlier, like interacting with normies can be painful because they have these shrouds, and it's hard to communicate. And I certainly feel that. Yeah, guys, Bitcoin and psychedelics. Up to you who goes first, but yeah, I want to hear more.
I definitely think Bitcoin is psychedelic. You know, said the very words itself just means mind manifesting, and if Bitcoin is nothing else, it's certainly mind manifesting, and it's kind of one of those never ending rabbit holes. You know, you can continue to go down it, and no matter which avenue you go, there's just more ways to go, and it kind of keeps branching off. And I feel like psychedelics tend to do that as well, where there's just always more to find out, and almost more questions than there will ever be answers. And I think that's a fun thing, because it's like a mystery that will never fully unravel, because it can't, you know, like there is no end to that rabbit hole.
Well, and the other one I'd point out is specifically with Bitcoin, like there's a very, very deep and very, very important relationship between Bitcoin and psychedelics. Like Ross Ulbricht specifically designed the Silk Road so that he could sell magic mushrooms online. So like you figure that some of the most OG people involved with Bitcoin probably had something to do with those early darknet markets. And furthermore, like these people probably weren't solely motivated just by an economic praxis, but like they probably found that it was really important to try to get these tools into the hands of the right people. Which, so like now we have this dynamic relationship interacting between people who do psychedelics and the importance of encryption and how it protects them, and creating this totally new market that facilitates people voluntarily doing transactions with one another, with the assurance that now the state isn't going to come in and break their hands just because they're curious about experimenting with their own mind. You know, I'm like, that's really, really important. Yeah, exactly.
He grew the mushrooms himself so he could have, that product. So I love to circle back to that deep relationship that the two have, as it goes back to that very beginning. And I think it goes back even farther. You know, encryption and psychedelics have been tied together since they basically began free to the people. You know, in the sense of the 1970s, we saw a whole renaissance of cryptography becoming public. Prior to that, it was mostly a military technology, and they were actually really pissed off that people like Diffie and Hellman were starting to release this technology into the wild, and they actually fought them over it. And I think that's part of the reason why there's that fight for self-sovereignty and privacy that's kind of linked into this. And all this kind of happened in the San Francisco Bay Area, which was kind of the psychedelic hotspot. So you have this mixture of technology, psychedelics, and personal computing that kind of all brewed together in this weird mix of cultural and also physical geospatial location and temporal as well. So you have this time and space location that's kind of this nexus of like the 60s to 70s in the Bay Area, where all this like both military technology was happening as well as the psychedelic revolution. So these things are deeply intertwined at a level where even when psychedelics weren't illegal, they were being used by the computer scientists of that day. So and a lot of them felt like, you know, like they were wresting control from the corporations, because computing at first was very much a tool of the corporation, a tool of the large, powerful industry and stuff like that. To have a mainframe computer, to have one of these computers, you had to have, you know, mega money, you know, $500,000 in the 60s or something like that. So the ability to think about, to even have the possibility in your brain that you could bring one of these things into your house and maybe use it for your own personal uses rather than the government's desires, was a revolutionary thing. And these people saw the power that personal computing could bring to self-sovereign individuals. So I think Bitcoin is a direct extension of all these things that have been brewing for a while. And I just love to see the mushroom Bitcoin connection there.
I think sovereignty is a key aspect of it, because I think if you've ever used psychedelics, you very much believe that you have sovereignty of your total self. And Bitcoin is the belief that you have sovereignty of your time. And so as you reference, it's about sovereignty of space and time. The space that you inhabit, primarily being, I say primarily as a slip of the tongue actually, but I mean it actually quite deliberately, that the space that you occupy primarily is your own body. And so yeah, you should have sovereignty over that. completely.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy into the fact that just using the psychedelics is enough, because you run into a bunch of people that also use psychedelics that aren't good like models as far as people or sovereign individuals. So like the psychedelic itself, while it's a tool, it can be used or misused, just like Bitcoin can. You can accidentally do some things in Bitcoin, although Bitcoin accidents are permanent and on chain forever. So your ancestors can laugh at you and stuff like that. But I think it's all relevant there. So I think like you some level of skill with what you're using. Oh, did they cut out? Yeah, I was just saying that you want to have the tool, but you also want to have some level of skill or adeptness with using it, or some kind of guide that that you're doing this in a manner that's going to benefit you in some way, because any tool can be used in a way that can hurt or benefit you. So
I like to say that with full sovereignty comes full responsibility, and that's exactly
yes. You can end up on the REKT section of this show.
Yeah, a lot in the REKT section. Next week we'll talk more about Phil's camera. Does he need a new one?
Yeah,
we've crossed the hour-and-a-half mark. It's too hot.
For wrong thing. You could still end up in a area.
Guys, I think we should wrap there. It's been a real pleasure. Merry Christmas to you all. Phil has some final words.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so first of all, I'm gonna steal a Walton line and just say fuck shit coins, but I need Walton to say it too. But before we wrap up this segment, listening to you guys talk about Bitcoin and psychedelics and of course not having done those types of drugs in several years, I'm thinking back to those experiences, and of course Bitcoin didn't exist back then. All we had was the tinfoil hats and our conspiracies, because I'm a Gen Xer. And what's really interesting to me is the connection in terms of psychedelics, the desire for higher consciousness, and also at the same time fiat money keeping us in base consciousness. And I'm not talking about the based term that people use where based. No, this is bad. This is bad base. Okay, this is shit base.
Yeah, you
this
mean
is
the
like
animalian.
This is the lead.
You mean good base,
right?
Phil, right? You mean
this
good base, yeah?
This is like alchemical lead, so to speak, right? Like this is what that is. And if you think about it, the quality of our money has kept our consciousness in this in this lead. Okay. And it doesn't mean that beautiful things can't spring from it or anything like that, but they take so much more work because they're fighting against so much more current. And I feel that with Bitcoin, Bitcoin allows more of that consciousness work to actually take hold in society, because people no longer need to busy themselves with as much of this base behavior to keep the wheel turning. So that's
absolutely
just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the kind of schizophrenia and paranoia that fiat creates that I was talking about. And in the same way that like psychedelics are really important, because I think it gives you such a radical encounter with the truth that like after that's over, like you can come back into this space and continue to like play fiat games and be an asshole, but like at the back of your mind, like you've seen the truth and you know what's actually there. And so like now there's at least a choice about what you can do. And in the same way, like once you actually get Bitcoin, like you're welcome to go back to fiat world and do that. But like there will be the problem of, you can see that there's a problem with fiat money and how it was created, and there's no relationship that tethers it to reality, and this creates all these other problems. And so to me, the main thing that both Bitcoin and psychedelics do is it allows for us to see the truth, so then we can make a choice. And like we're not saying that the truth is easy or that it's fun or even that it feels good, but it is what it is, and you can have a choice to pursue that or this other form of life that you've been given.
I think the two are about exercising your right over your time, with fiat very much being where another group of people is arguing that they own part of your time.
Yeah, when Phil was saying that, it kind of brought to my mind almost like an evil alchemy, where they've figured a way to turn lead into gold by giving us this paper fiat money. So fiat is like this evil alchemy where they've figured this trick that they can do with black magic and actually pulled the wool over the whole world's eyes by giving us this paper dollars and telling us it's gold. So they finally found this way to do their evil alchemy. So I don't know if that just was a thought that popped into my head while you were talking.
Yeah.
Damn it, we're vibing and the camera's gone. All right.
Right, guys. Well,
All right, guys.
Message from the
thanks.
universe.
This was
Happy holidays,
episode
y'all.
20. You can find Pleb Underground on a whole range of platforms, YouTube, but also audio only platforms such as Anchor, Spotify, and
Apple.
Fountain. Did I say Fountain already? Apple.
And then if you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm.
Or Breeze!
With Breeze. All right, and wait, before we go, how do we find our guests? Erik, you go first. How do people find you?
I have a blog called cryptosovereignty.org. I'll be taking most of my articles in there and publishing that in a book with Bitcoin Magazine shortly. And outside of that, you can find me on Twitter. It's just my name, ErikCason on Twitter. Yeah, and I'm always open to dialogue, so feel free to shoot me a DM or comment on any of the crazy stuff I say.
Very cool, very cool. Fractal, where do we find you, my dude?
Erik with a K when you look him up. I remember the first time I did, I got confused when I heard it on the whatever, and I was like,
well, because otherwise it'd be two C's back to back, and
I found a bunch of bots.
Exactly.
Yeah, parents would have never done that to him. So yeah. So, anyways, you can find me at fractalEncrypt on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy holidays. This episode, you guys are going to watch this on Monday, but this is actually being recorded on Friday, and we will be back next week with episode 21.
With a very secret guest. Who's it going to be? I don't know. Well, actually, I might do, but shh, you'll find out soon. So, yeah, guys, Merry Christmas. And what do we say around here, Phil?
Fuck shitcoins.
Fuck shitcoins.
Peace.
All right. Happy holidays, guys. Merry Christmas, and hope to see you soon. Be well.
Yeah. Everybody's getting ready for the new year. Happy New Year.